much for that generous introduction. I also like Covenant Bank, and I'm a consumer reporter, so there we go. I am humbled and honored beyond measure tonight. A heartfelt thank you to PERIL International, President and CEO Janet Mincer, Women of Influence Committee Chair Sue Maslow, and the entire Women of Influence Committee, especially Linda Bishop and Callie Cooper. I'd also like to express my deep appreciation to each and every one of you in attendance, especially those of you who drove 1 to 3 hours from the city, our really good friends, our family members, and my 6ABC colleagues. It is a wonderfully small world we live in. In December, one of my dearest childhood friends in California, Jiho Lee, sent me this picture. He sent it after he saw my social media post about the Pearl S. Buck Taking Action tour. The man on the far left, next to Pearl Buck, is Jiho's grandfather. Kim Myung-yup was the president of Yowon, the first women's magazine in South Korea. And in 1960, he sponsored Pearl Buck's first visit to the country of our ancestors. It was after that trip, Pearl Buck wrote The Living Reed, a historical novel about life in Korea, and in 1964 opened the Opportunity Center and orphanage there. It was part of her effort to address poverty and discrimination faced particularly by mixed-race children in Asian countries. And I am delighted to tell you that the proud daughter of Kim Myung-up, Mrs. Sunny Lee, is here tonight with her husband, Mr. Frank Lee. They are my second parents, sitting next to my third parents, my mother-in-law and Uncle Jim, who live right here in Percy. Thank you so much for being here from Percy, and to Mr. and Mrs. Lee for flying in all the way from Florida tonight. Florida to Philadelphia is many miles to travel, but the Lees do not win the prize for having traveled the farthest. An extra special thanks to my dad, who flew 14 hours from Seoul, Korea to be here. It means the world to me, Daddy, and everything I am, good and bad, you are responsible for. I am a direct result of your and Mom's love and support and encouragement, so thank you. I was interviewed by Philadelphia Magazine a few years ago, and if the question had been, who is the person you most admire, my answer would have been my dad. But the question was, who is the most historical person you admire? And my answer for that was Pearl Buck, but perhaps not for the reasons you might think. Pearl Buck is most famous for being a beautiful writer. She won a Pulitzer Prize for The Good Earth, and she was the first woman to win the Nobel Prize for Literature. But to me, what is even more impressive about Pearl Buck was how she used her writing and leveraged the celebrity that came with it to make an incredible impact as a humanitarian and as an activist. And to really appreciate her work in those roles, you have to understand her upbringing. Pearl Buck was the child of missionaries. She was born in America, but grew up in China and considered China her own country. It was the only one she knew. But China labeled her a foreigner. She was the target of prejudice, persecution, and violence because of her blonde hair, blue eyes, and white skin. But Pearl Buck was made to feel even more like an outsider when she moved to America after high school. She writes about her painful early college days, quote, "Girls came in groups to stare at me." No matter where Pearl Buck found herself, she was labeled as other. And even though she took great pride in her extraordinary and unusual background, she felt alienated and alone. I liken a label maker to a gun. One fires words, the other fires bullets, but depending on how we use them, they are equally divisive, damaging, and destructive. Pearl Buck's story of being labeled as other, despite her conviction of self, resonates with me. Growing up, I had the only Asian face in my mostly white neighborhood in a small town in California. I was labeled chink and Oriental girl by some, and I was asked countless times where you're from. The message being, you are an outsider, not from here. But I mostly ignored those incidents and wore my Korean American label with pride. My parents taught me by their words and by their actions that in order to fully embrace my true, whole American self, I had to honor and understand my Korean roots. So I did that and more. I treasured and shared the gifts being Korean gave me. As a child, I loved bringing my friends over and showing them the red peppers my grandmother was drying in our backyard. I loved daring them to eat kimchi, and I loved exposing them to the Korean language we spoke at home. But at the same time, I also wanted to fit in with my friends with blue eyes and blonde hair, especially as I got older. So I did all kinds of things to try to make that happen. For instance, in high school, I wore the most American uniform I could access at the time, the uniform of a varsity cheerleader. But no matter how hard I cheered, I didn't even feel like I belonged in my own squad. So I was excited to leave my small town and head to a big university with a diverse student body and a pretty large Asian American community. But in college, I was labeled an outsider again, this time by my fellow Korean Americans. They labeled me a Twinkie and a banana, yellow on the outside, but white on the inside. Apparently, spending my childhood trying to fit in with white America had an unintended consequence. After college, I started my career in broadcast news. My first job took me to another small, mostly white town, this time in Idaho, where I also got stuck with more labels. Often, Connie Chung, and again, the token Asian and forever foreigner. Once I was covering a nasty accident scene, and a probably well-intentioned couple came up to me and said, "Honey, are you lost? Do you speak English?" I whispered back, "I speak English for a living, and probably better than you do." I feel kind of bad about that now. I have similar stories from my reporting days in Oklahoma City and in Houston. I've now been an action news reporter and anchor here in the Delaware Valley for more than 15 years. It's the 4th largest market in the country, and I am grateful to be a part of it, and I love my job. Viewers often are so generous and tell me they enjoy my troubleshooter reports and my consumer investigations. Sometimes they even ask for my autograph, and that makes me feel great. It makes me feel like when people see me now, instead of seeing the face of a foreigner, they see the face of a valued community member, and my label of television journalist trumps that of any other, and I finally belong somewhere. I'm finally accepted. But I got a jolt of reality one beautiful September day. I was walking in our neighborhood just blocks from our house where our 2 small children were waiting for me. My husband and I were getting ready to celebrate our 7th wedding anniversary, and I was on cloud 9, feeling so thankful and frankly untouchable. When all of a sudden, when I was in a crosswalk crossing the street at a green light, a car turned into that intersection and came this close to hitting me. The driver and I exchanged words about who had the right of way. And then as she drove off, she yelled, "This is America." Those 3 words, "This is America," felt like a slap in my face. They took me back to every label that had deepened my sense of other. It turns out all those incidents I thought I had ignored and just let roll off my back actually hadn't gone anywhere. They had been weighing me down, and those 3 words, "This is America," added to their weight and brought me to my knees. They unleashed in me an anger I didn't know existed and now could no longer contain, especially as I thought of my children, who look a lot like me. So after a lifetime of bottling up hurt and sealing it with a smile, I exploded on social media. I responded to that driver in no uncertain terms with strength and venom, taking ownership of her words, "This is America," in a live Facebook video that I hashtagged with that same phrase. And much to my surprise, the video went viral. 3 million views, 67,000 reactions, 38,000 shares, 16,000 comments. Many people expressing solidarity and support, giving me the internet equivalent of a high five. But there were also those who seemed to hate me and my "This is America" message. They labeled me a tyrant, a race baiter, a sensitive snowflake, an idiot, a loser, and even a liar. Throughout our history, people have used labels to divide, dehumanize, and to construct a human hierarchy, to oppress, enslave, and create fear. Black people labeled beasts and animals, Native Americans labeled savages, Asians labeled the yellow peril. And the deep anxiety these labels perpetuated turned into policy. The Chinese Exclusion Act was the first significant law restricting immigration into the United States, and that was just the beginning. For years, all Asians were banned from becoming naturalized US citizens. We could not even legally own or lease land. The Japanese were labeled devils just before more than 100,000, mostly Americans, of Japanese descent were forced into internment camps during World War II. Pearl Bach fought against the Chinese Exclusion Act despite the discrimination she experienced in China. She believed we must leave our bitterness behind and focus on our future. And in fact, it was her best-selling novel, The Good Earth, that started a pro-Chinese movement in the United States after it revealed the suffering of ordinary citizens in rural China. Bach also spoke out against the Japanese internment camp, saying, "We cannot label Japanese Americans our enemies. They are Americans." Yet despite all of Pearl Bach's efforts and the effort of so many others, we have not moved away from this dangerous practice of adverse labeling. So back to my This Is America video and those ugly labels pushed out on social media. I wasn't the only recipient. People on social media also labeled the driver, and so did I. I labeled her and anyone who didn't like my This Is America message racist, ignorant, and stupid. Other people labeled the driver white and entitled. But here's the thing, I never revealed the color of her skin. Now, I had no doubt the labels I had given others were right, and I felt my story showed my detractors how wrong they were. But then a very honest friend of mine burst my bubble. She said, "Do you think your video did anything to change the driver's mind? Your level of rage and vitriol is blinding you from any other perspective. And if you care to reach people who have a different point of view, you must be open to the idea that this is not a binary issue of right and wrong." Boy, did that make me mad. I thought to myself, my friend knows my experience. She knows I pride myself on living my core values of tolerance, diversity, and inclusion. How could she be accusing me of being bigoted and blind? But I couldn't stop thinking about her words. So I decided to investigate the possibility that maybe my friend was onto something. So I sought out my critics, who came in all colors and backgrounds just like my supporters. I wanted to have a real conversation with them. I invited a truly diverse group of people to step out of social media and come to the table to talk and to listen. And I committed to being open to being surprised. One critic on Facebook was a man named Wayne. I really wanted to talk to him, but I couldn't get him to sit down and meet with me. But you know me. I know how to find things. I'm an investigative journalist. So I found his address and showed up at his house one afternoon unannounced. You should have seen his face when he opened the door and saw me standing there. But instead of slamming the door, as many might have done, Wayne invited me in. And after spending time with Wayne and his family, I was surprised. I had labeled Wayne as unlike me, but we have a lot in common. We're both working parents with upside-down schedules. We have children the same ages. We both like basketball. Both of us are willing to be vulnerable. And most importantly, we both want to do better. Wayne, who is white, told me he had commented on my This Is America video out of knee-jerk anger and fear. He said he had been feeling a growing anti-white sentiment in our country, and our us versus them mentality had put him on the defensive. During our face-to-face conversation, Wayne also revealed he had been on his own journey of reflection and revelation. I wasn't expecting that, but I was even more shocked to learn that the catalyst to his journey had been my phone call and my Facebook video. Wayne told me after I reached out to him, he went back and watched my video again, and this time in its entirety. And he didn't like the reflection he saw in his computer screen. He said my video inspired him to step away from the keyboard, stop fueling the fire on Facebook, and do something he had never done before. He reached out of his all-white bubble in a number of ways, including joining an old friend's all-black fantasy football league. Wayne says getting to know the men in that league changed his life. He now participates in one of their regular podcasts about Black issues and counts many of them as friends, part of his inner circle. My conversations with Wayne and others have profoundly changed me. I see when we label carelessly and quickly, we kill conversations before they can even begin. But the possibilities for connection are limitless when we pause and consider what else might be true. Pearl Buck said, "I learned early to understand that there is no such condition in human affairs as absolute truth. There is only truth as people see it, and it even in fact may be kaleidoscopic in the variety." So these are the labels I choose for myself today. Woman, American, Asian American, Korean American, daughter of immigrants, friend, wife, and mom, journalist, storyteller, truth seeker, and optimist. And as I look at my labels, I find myself thinking about the driver who sparked this entire investigation. I see now, we share a lot of labels too. At the minimum, woman and friend, perhaps wife and mom, and I'm pretty sure American. Now let me be clear, I don't regret responding to that driver, and in fact, I do now regret all the years I spent being quiet. So I will continue to address and engage those I do not understand, and I encourage you to do the same. But what would happen if we all proactively choose a new kind of response? What if we approach each other with curiosity and the courage to listen, taking the initiative and reaching out to understand other people's stories? Pearl Buck made it her mission to do exactly that. She listened and learned from her African American friends and used their stories to fight against racism and social injustice. She wrote about life in China, Korea, and India to connect the East to the West and to help Americans empathize with people on the other side of the world, to open our eyes to our shared struggles and values. I now see more clearly than ever the importance of Pearl Buck's work and how critical it is we continue her mission as they are right here at Pearl Buck International. Imagine if we all moved in to understand people who seem different, not just because of race, but because of socioeconomic background, religion, or political party, or anything else that makes us other. Through my own This Is America journey, I have learned when we take the film off our own lens, it becomes clear we are all just fellow human beings. Of course, this is just my unique story. I recognize people are targets for all kinds of reasons, and some of the attacks people experience are violent and far more severe than my own. I acknowledge being vulnerable could mean they are literally risking their life. All I know is dropping my label maker took a lot of weight off of me and gave me the freedom to understand both sides of a conversation. We don't have to agree on everything. Realistically, we never will. But just because we disagree about one thing doesn't mean we have to disagree about everything. And when we build trust and empathy, we discover the ways we are alike and open up a space to dialogue about our differences. Pearl Buck believed in the common goodness of mankind, so much so that she said, "I feel no need for any other faith than my faith in human beings." I have that faith too. So while I am undeserving of this recognition tonight, I accept it with a pledge and a promise to use it as an opportunity to encourage and inspire activism in the name of the incomparable Pearl Buck. It is not easy work, I warn you, and I still struggle with it, but I invite all of you to join me in the effort, because I believe we have a shot together at successfully transforming our collective conversation in ways that will make the American experience better for all of us. I realize I have the privilege of a pretty big platform to speak up, but whether a journalist or a student or a stay-at-home parent, we can all be meaningful, everyday activists and create change in our circles and communities. You have opportunity and power and reach to embark on your own This Is America journey, and I hope you do. Our This Is America series is at 6abc.com/thisisamerica. I hope you will watch it and use it as a springboard for your own conversations. Thank you so much for having me here today.